Welcome to Eric Hates Games. This is a talk show about games, the people who make them, the people who play them, and everything in between. Each week we pick a topic and discuss. And if you have an idea for an episode or questions you'd like answered by our esteemed gaming experts, send me an email, a tweet, a carrier pigeon, anything you find that's an appropriate way to convey what you want us to talk, or the royal us to talk about on Eric Hates Games. And this week, we convert your venti latte into 12 full video games. My name is Eric, and I hate the cost of video games. So, off the bat, let's just talk about what the cost of games is, or the value of games is. And today, we want to, again, the royal we, want to focus on a quantitative approach to the value of games, or the cost of games. Quantitative meaning quantity, strict numbers view, not necessarily a qualitative approach. A qualitative approach would be, what value does this old game have for me, despite the fact that it only costs $1. Maybe it was my great-grandmother's copy of Pac-Man, and that has a huge qualitative value. Today we're just talking about quantitative value, quantitative approach to cost of games. So I want to start by talking about consoles, and consoles there's just a word for system. A lot of people say system. So how much did consoles cost in the past, and how much do they cost today? And so some current prices that we have would be a Nintendo Switch. A Nintendo Switch would cost somewhere between $299 and maybe a little bit more if you get a carrying case, different colored Joy-Cons, things like that. Now the Switch Lite, the Lite version of that system, is only $199. So we're talking $200 to $300 for a quote-unquote current generation console, even though it came out about a year ago. Now, that might sound expensive for a video game system, $300, but if we look historically, that's actually not. So, for example, the Atari 2600 in 1977 released at the same price as a Switch Lite. And Atari was $199 in 1977. And if we adjust that cost for inflation, in 2020, the Atari 2600 would cost around $843. Okay, so that's a lot of money. Imagine buying the system that played Pong for $843. And I'm sure the joysticks cost an additional amount of money. The Atari games themselves cost a bunch of money before the collapse of all games and bargain bin trash. But that's another tangent we don't need to talk about today. The Sega Saturn released in 1995, and it was kind of a surprise release from Sega. No one knew it was coming out, and it famously released at a ridiculous price point, $399. So $399 for a Sega Saturn, which was the next gen. It was one of the first systems to have CDs instead of cartridges, and if we adjust the price for the Sega Saturn, in 2020 that would be about $671. So not as wild as the Atari difference, but again, economists will tell you about compounding interest and inflation and cost of parts and manufacturing and all that jazz. But that's a lot of money for a system, $670 to pay for a system. So parents, if you're grumbling about buying a new system, just think about what it would have cost 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And that might make you a little bit lighter about purchasing that Switch for your son, daughter, niece, nephew, so on and so forth. A Nintendo 64, by the way, we have an N64 here. This console released in, I think, 95 or 96, probably 96, and that was about $150 back then. I didn't do the price adjustment, but that's probably like $400 nowadays. That was a pretty good price if you look at the fact that like the N64 released around the Saturn at about less than half the price. So Nintendo has their own marketing strategies that seem to be working for them. So the bottom line is gaming consoles are drastically less expensive than they were. So today, consoles cost a lot less to purchase than they did in the past. So now let's talk about games themselves, not the hardware that plays them, but the hardware that they're on, the cartridges or the software nowadays. And so let's start by talking about a Nintendo Entertainment System game. This is an NES game from, 1990. 1986 was when the NES came out in America. And so the average price for an NES game in 1990 was $50. 50. Okay, converted to 2020, adjusting it for inflation, that's about $98. So a new copy of Punch-Out for NES would run you about $98 if you were to purchase it today. Okay, an N64 game, that famously low-priced system, and this is a funny example because it's a console port of an arcade cabinet, but an N64 game would cost around $70 in 1998. Okay, so I fondly remember going through Toys R Us and running up and down the aisles and like taking the tickets, like, oh, I want this one. I had a pretty privileged life where I was allowed to do that. But at some point I had forgotten that those games cost as much, if not more, than the games I'm now purchasing myself as an adult with income and mortgage and other, stuff to think about. So $70 N64 game. In 2020, that would be about $110. Okay, so nowadays, what we found is that the general cost of a new game, a game that is brand new, it was around $50, but it's since jumped, understandably so, to about $60. So getting a brand new game at launch, the words at launch means when it comes out, and we've had some big launches in the recent past. There's a Dragon Ball Z game that came out a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago. That'll run you about $60. So nowadays it's around $60, which, if you think about it, if this N64 game in 1998 cost $70 and today we're paying $60, you got to start thinking about the other cost of games, which is the cost of development. Okay, team sizes in the past were generally much smaller than they are today. Teams of developers, meaning like programmers, artists, modelers, animators, different jobs, marketers, social media people, like HR, finance. There's producers, managers. There's dozens and dozens of jobs in a game development team. But a famous example is Grand Theft Auto 5. Okay, I'm personally not a huge fan of GTA, the whole series. I did play 3 a lot, but when I saw my roommate playing 5, and then I went to the high school that I taught at the next day and realized that my high school students were playing that same absurdly obscene game, I was a little put off. But anyways, the proof is in the pudding with GTA 5's numbers. Okay, so GTA 5, it cost reportedly around $265 million to develop and market. $265 million to put out GTA 5. Okay, now at that cost, if we assume $60 each per copy, then GTA 5 would have to have sold about 4.5 million units to break even. Okay, so 4.4 million units at $60 each would get you to that $265 million mark. What actually happened kind of blew the minds of everyone, including the Guinness Book of World Records. GTA 5 currently has like 6 or 7 records in that book. But within 24 hours, GTA sold over 11 million copies. Okay, and we're talking about within 24 hours is an important time frame because that's the time that it's going to cost at least $60 to purchase. Okay, a week out, a month out, 2 years out, it's going to be 40, 50, 70% off. But 11 million copies at $60 each. So they cleared their revenue targets. By April 2018, GTA 5 reached over $6 billion in revenue. Let that sink in. Give a little pregnant pause there. $6 billion cleared by one video game. Now, it's worth noting at this point that GTA 5 does not only make money on copies sold. It's a very common thing in games today to lengthen your tail of sales, not just by selling initially, but also selling initially and then selling things within the game throughout the lifetime of the game. So players in GTA 5 do purchase a lot of in-app purchases and in-game purchases, but however they're making money, $6 billion is a huge number. Okay, at that price, Rockstar could help pay down the national debt to some extent. So we're talking about one company's one game and $6 billion. By November 2019, so about a year ago, less than a year ago, GTA 5 has reported over 115 million copies sold. So 115 million copies sold. They undoubtedly did not all sell for $60 each. So that's worth noting. But even still, 115 million copies. If you were to get it at half price the whole time, $30, that's a lot of money. And where does that money go? Of course, that money goes to one, CEOs. Gotta pay the boss man, boss woman, but in games more likely boss man, unfortunately. Gotta pay the boss. Got to pay the boss's assistants, got to pay the shareholders, got to pay the boards, and you got to pay the employees. Employee salaries at Rockstar, I'm sure, range anywhere from, I want to guess the CEO's pulling down $1 million a year, probably, but then you get the people who are actually doing the work. That can be anywhere from an engineer making 6 figures. And I don't mean like upper 6 figures. I mean, $100,000, maybe $200,000 for senior people who've been there for a while. To the QA grunts, the grunts who are testing the games over and over, they're probably pulling down $18 an hour, or whatever New York State's minimum wage is at any given moment, without benefits. But of course, you do have to factor in costs of development. You got to think about benefits for people, cost of the room that you're working in, the building, the heating, all that good stuff. But anyways, that's just a nice initial glance at the cost of purchasing games and also the cost of developing games through time. So we're going to take a quick, we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will be very happy to talk more about the cost of games. So please join us after the break. Thanks for watching so far.
I'm Andrea Lucia, a graduate of County College of Morris. At CCM, I gained a high-quality education, was involved with clubs on campus, and performed university research in tissue engineering. My CCM education prepared me for ongoing success. Today, I am at Cornell University, studying engineering and performing research in cardiac tissue engineering. The professors and staff at CCM helped me to start right and finish strong.
Welcome back to Eric Hates Games. If you're just joining us, all of us here today, we are talking about the cost and value of video games. And as a general reminder, we're taking a quantitative approach to talking about games. So the dollars and cents of it. All right. In the first segment, we talked a lot about how much games cost historically and how much they cost now, and adjusting prices for inflation, and a ton of fun economic things that I have a very loose grasp on. I did want to bring up this example real quickly. This is a game called NHL 95, I think. Yeah, NHL 95. It's for the Sega Genesis. And a student brought this to my attention because it has a pre-owned sticker on it. And this was purchased pre-owned for $49.99 for the Sega Genesis. So just in case you didn't believe any of the numbers from the first segment, games used to cost $50, $60, $70, and they still do. They still cost $60. So, I wish I did some more research about the cost of bread or the cost of food or drink back then. But anyways, what we're going to talk about now is sales. Okay, a lot of markets have sales, a lot of different, you can go to a Black Friday sale and get things for real cheap and all this fun stuff. But video games have famously had sales in the last five to 6 years about. And this goes back to our episode about Steam and Valve and digital distribution. So, shameless plug to go watch our other episode about Steam and what it means to sell your game. But anyways, there are a few big contenders in the sales game of video games. Steam is the biggest distributor of digital content in 2020. It has been for many years. There's another company that I want to talk about called Humble, and they have what are famously known as Humble Bundles. And there's the last company is G2A. And G2A is a gray market key reseller that has a lot of fun, nasty things we can talk about, but provides some value for a reseller's market. Probably, I guess the best analogy I can think of off the top of my head is like StubHub, or reselling tickets to concerts and things like that. So Steam regularly has sales. This is not an annual thing, even though annual would still be considered as regular. This is like, they just got done with I think we're still in the Lunar New Year sale for Steam. So Steam still has the Lunar New Year sale. They have the winter sale. They have a summer sale, an autumn sale. You see where I'm going with this, right? Every single season has a sale, and there's at least 4 of those. In addition to that, we have like big holiday sales. New Year's is always like a big sales drive on Steam, and there's numerous other ones. But anyways, Steam sales often have games discounted at 50% or more. Okay, so if you're only looking at Steam, you can often get games for half price within a year of their release. So earlier we said the general release point is $60. I've seen games drop to 50% of that within 2 weeks. 1 to 2 weeks, I think, is the fastest I've seen a game drop to 50%. And this brings up a whole lot of questions. Not just as consumers, but as makers of games. So as consumers, the questions are pretty easy to answer, okay, which is, if I can wait 1 week to pay half off, should I do that? And I know many people have different values of money, and a lot of people will just buy it because it's brand new. And I don't want to discount that effect of being part of the early adopters, part of the launch game crowd. You know, I got it at launch. I got to play it first before you did. And yeah, you saved $30 on your copy, but I was there on the front lines catching those Temtems, or those whatever the Pokemon are called in Temtem. Great little allusion to a recently released Pokemon MMO. So anyways, Steam, you know, you're going to find games on sale there. As an example, GTA 5, that monumentally high grossing game, is currently $19.99 right now. So right now you can buy GTA for $20, which is a third of the launch price. Of course, GTA 5 came out many years ago, so that's not too impressive, but it's still really interesting to see the cost of games over time. Okay, now if we talk about Humble is a company that sells games. Developers and publishers pair up with charities, and the consumer, the gamers, get to choose, first of all, what tier they are going to purchase on the Humble bundle, and then they also determine with sliders how much goes to developers, how much goes to publishers, and how much percentage of their payment goes to charity. So it's pretty nice as a consumer to have these options, right? But it has skewed my view of the cost of everything, the cost of everyday things. Okay, and this is why. Because the first tier of the Humble bundle is usually $1. So if you want to buy the first tier of the bundle, you're going to pay $1. And that tier often has 3 games in it. Okay? So you're paying $1 for 3 video games. Now, remember our opener. A $4 latte is now in my brain immediately converted to 12 video games. And the question, or the questions, arise. Okay? Which is more valuable? That latte or 12 video games? Which provides more value to you as a human? Now, this answer has so many contextual attributes that it may be impossible to answer, and it's going to change from person to person. For example, I am thirsty right now. That latte is going to have more value than it will after my morning coffee. Okay, morning coffee, boom. My thirst is sated, I'm caffeinated, got some energy going. Value of the latte goes down. But throughout the day, it's that, what's the 5-hour energy, that 4 o'clock feeling, or whatever their sales tag is. All of a sudden that latte might be worth $4 to me. But how about 12 video games? Okay, that means buying the $1 tier 4 times, or 4 different $1 tiers, and you're getting 12 video games. How many hours of entertainment is that going to provide me? And at what level is that entertainment? You know, is it just a time sink? Is it just a distraction from bills and doing the dishes and laundry? Or is it something more profound? You know, is it something that's going to change my viewpoint on life and society after I'm done playing it? Or is it something that's going to inform my design decisions as a game designer after playing it? Okay, so you play, give an example, you play The Witness by Jonathan Blow, and I can tell you for sure that before The Witness came out, I thought it was nonsense. You walk up to a bunch of screens and you play snake puzzles, and that's it. But after playing The Witness, walking around the town I live in, I would see things and be like, that looks like a puzzle in The Witness. Or what if I just moved this tree branch this way and then it slid down into here? Would I unlock something? Would I get some cool feedback? So value of games qualitatively is a whole other episode, and you can join all of us the next time that we meet to talk about this qualitative discussion of value of games. But anyways, back to quantity, pure numbers, love it. G2A is a gray market seller. That means that it's not Walmart, okay? It's not Amazon. It is a secondhand seller. So you can purchase, I can go on G2A right now, and I can purchase a voucher, an alphanumeric code for pretty much any video game I can think of, okay? And as an example, GTA 5 is currently $15 on G2A. Okay, and that's not that huge of a discount from $19 or $20 to $15, but it is a discount. And if I were to provide two things to you, you know, I said, hey, do you want this coffee for $20 or $15? You're usually going to say $15. Now, the problem with G2A, sorry, there are many problems, but an initial problem is that the question of where these keys come from. Okay, where are these games coming from? If you buy it from Walmart, you know that at some point in the distribution line, Rockstar developed the game, hired a company to press it to a disc, hired another company to make the box that it goes in, and at some point it got to a Walmart. You know, if you bought it, it came on a truck. Going back to Jimmy Hoffa, because I just watched Irishman finally. But in G2A's case, the keys are often purchased in bulk, and they're often purchased in shady manners with illegal credit cards, for example. So I will steal a credit card, purchase a whole bunch of codes, then sell them to you for a great discount, and the profit is all mine. And so that's pretty shady, because your key can get disqualified, it can get revoked, it can get canceled, and also you're not helping the developers who made this piece of entertainment for you. Okay? So there's a lot that goes into the shadiness of G2A. It's generally bad for developers and publishers, and arguably maybe sometimes good for consumers. But anyways, so why are sales good as a devil's advocate approach? And the quick and easy answer is that sales used to be like this. You know, you release, your sales are high, and after about a year, maybe less, your tail diminishes and you're at or approaching $0 worth of sales a year out, 2 years out. Sales now take that tail and they elongate it. So 1 year, 2 years, 3 years after release, you're still selling copies. And there's data to suggest that after each sale, so you buy No Man's Sky for $30, after those sales, after the discounted sale, the sales of full price go up right after that. So it's generally good for developers to have these sales, although it does make me wonder about the mental effects of our value of games. You know, if we can get 3 games for $1, how much do our brains understand the work that went into making those games and the people that are behind that? Okay, so that's going to do it for today's episode, this first in our new season where I part my hair the other way. And today's real life advice is 70% of success is showing up. Thanks for being with us.